This is the PI Education monthly webinar for April. We are live at the moment. We will start the podcast or the broadcast right at 1 o'clock. Thanks for joining us. We're happy you're here. And as folks join the webinar, just hang tight. We'll start in about 3 minutes. We're excited you're here. Rosetta Stone has already asked a question before we started the webinar. She says, I don't look happy. I am thrilled to be here. Breaking news. I just got a news alert. Bill Cosby was found guilty today. I didn't know that he was even being tried right now. So a little bit of news for you. We got about 2 minutes before we start this thing. Hang with us. And 1 minute before we start, we've got a lot of people joining today. I'm pretty excited about this. So apparently there are a lot of questions going back and forth on the YouTube channel. I'm pretty excited about this. We've got about 10 seconds before we start. April 2018, PI Education webinar. Disclaimers, we are not attorneys. We're not offering legal advice. When you have legal questions, hire an attorney. This is the PI Education monthly webinar for April 2018. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. Today, we're going to talk about unmanned aerial surveillance for PIs. PI Education offers these monthly webinars every month on the fourth Thursday of the month. They're free, they're informative, they're a way for you to get to know us and us to get to know you. We're glad you're here. A little bit about the structure of these webinars. We'll take a break at about the halfway point to shamelessly plug some of our educational offerings. There's a promo code in it for you, so stick with us throughout the webinar. If you need to leave or take a call or any other reason, don't worry about missing anything. We'll keep the recorded webinar up here on our YouTube channel for you to come back to again and again. By the way, if you're watching us on YouTube, go down just below the screen there, and you'll see a subscribe button. Go ahead and click on that. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us to get more subscribers. We like subscribers. I'm joined today by Lamar Ellis. Lamar is the man behind DroneNoir.com. He trains people in the use of drones. Lamar offers seminars on practical uses for commercial UAVs around the country. One of the seminars he offers is Unmanned Aerial Vehicles and Systems. Another one he offers is drone technology and its impact on the appraisal industry. He offers these seminars nationwide for many professionals in various industries, including real estate, insurance, law enforcement, and attorneys. If you're interested in booking Lamar for a seminar, simply send him an email at info@dronenoir.com. That's info@dronenoir.com. He'll probably get back with you really quickly. Give him a couple of days just in case he's out doing his thing. Once exclusively used by the military, unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, are now used for a variety of commercial reasons. From real estate to making movies, there's no denying the exciting possibilities presented by civilian UAV use. We're here today to talk about some ways investigators can use drones. I'm thrilled to introduce you to our guest for the April PI Education webinar, Mr. Lamar Ellis. Lamar, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hal, it's great to be with you, and thank you so very much for letting me be part of this webinar. My name is Lamar Ellis. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm actually a real estate valuation expert with over 30 years of experience in appraising commercial and residential properties. And it was 5 years ago that I saw a news report on privacy infringement using a drone. And the news report took a drone up from the front of somebody's house, and as they were rising it over the house, I saw things from a different perspective. And at that point, I knew that this was a game-changing technology. And I was watching the news report with my grandfather, and I turned to him and I said, this is what I want to do with my life. So I've spent the last 5 years trying to get myself as involved with the drone industry as possible. And I'm on the educational side of it. So that allows me some avenues to be that companies don't feel threatened by me coming in to see what they do. So I've worked on everything from movies and television to inspections to consulting with search and rescue. And it has been quite a journey. And again, my journey leads me to you today. Can I give a disclaimer first? And that is, I'm not a lawyer either, nor am I an expert on drone laws, and absolutely not responsible for your compliance with state and federal laws. This webinar is for informational purposes and to raise awareness of the laws and drone uses that might affect you. And ultimately, you're the one who's going to have to be to make sure that you're legal and seek professional advice if you need to, or contact your local law enforcement.
And when you say you're not speaking directly to me, you're speaking to everybody in the chat right now.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Sorry, I didn't mean to direct it right at you. Yes, and as a matter of fact, my experiences have found that most people, if they understand what's going on, are more than happy to assist you. I really haven't run across any real backlashes as far as making a phone call.
Right. Now, are you certified by the FAA to operate a drone?
Yes, I am. That's called a Part 107. And on August 29th of 2016, they finally enacted rules that somebody like me that was not a manned pilot could actually get certified. And if you want to, we can go over some of the things that you need to know about that.
I think that'd be a good idea. I'm a pilot. My wife's a pilot. I'm familiar with the FAA. I know that a lot of times when you pick up the phone and it says, "Hi, this is the FAA calling," it's not a good phone call. But I think it would be important to talk about kind of the basics of getting into the drone business and how to fly drones for commercial purposes. Now, flying drones for, personal reasons like taking pictures of your farm or your ranch or your vacation at the beach, there are some things you have to consider there. But we're talking about commercial uses and uses as private investigators. So yeah, I would be thrilled if you talk about the parts from the FAR about that.
Okay, well, if you're a manned pilot, you've already got your Part 61 certification. So that means you're up to date with the rules. So all you have to do is apply to become a remote pilot. Because what a remote pilot's education is basically on manned aircraft rules. We don't really have unmanned aircraft rules in the at present. And what that means is that I have to be aware of what's going on in the sky. So what it consists of is it's a knowledge test plus a safety course. You can get all this through the FAA's UAS website. So it's faa.gov/UAS for a lot of the information that I'll be covering with you right now. But the rules and regulations are basically, if you're going to make any kind of money from what you're flying, if you're flying a drone and you want to make any kind of money, and that means using your photographs or any of the information to make money, then you have to get the Part 107. And it's rules like you need to stay under 400 feet. You can't fly over 100 miles an hour. You can't fly directly over people not involved with the operation of the drone. You fly between the hours of civil twilight, which is 30 minutes before sunrise, 30 minutes after sunset. You can't strap anything hazardous onto your drone. And let's see, I'm sure there's you can't fly, like I said, you can't fly at night. You must fly at day, and you must fly with weather conditions that are applicable to being able to keep your aircraft in the air.
All right, I got a question for you. Again, tell me what the FAR part is for this.
Part 107.
Okay. And for those that aren't familiar, FAR stands for Federal Aviation Regulations, I believe, or something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and the FARs are broken down into parts for different types of flying at different types of aircraft. So you've got a Part 135, which would be charter, the part he's talking about for private pilots, and then Part 107 applies specifically to drone operations. I just got a question from the crowd that said, are they legal everywhere if used by a licensed private investigator? I think what I'm hearing you say is if you're going to use this for a commercial purpose, if it's going to earn you money, you need to be certificated under Part 107. Is that right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
And just because you're a private investigator doesn't mean that you are qualified to fly. What I'm saying there is that you need to pass the exams. And as far as a private investigator, then you start running into new laws and rules that are out there on the books, and one of them falls under privacy, which is Fourth Amendment rights. And those are they're currently being addressed. So a lot of the stuff that we might talk about today could actually change tomorrow. The rulings, these things are being taken care of in court right now as we speak, some of these privacy laws. Matter of fact, last year somebody shot down a drone over their property. The state judge basically let the person who shot the drone down off the hook, but it's a federal offense to take down an aircraft. So we've got a little bit of bucking with the state laws and federal laws right now.
I got to be honest. If I were at home and somebody were flying a drone directly over my property, looking at me, I might be tempted to shoot it down too.
Well, I tell you, when I was in South Dakota and I brought this up, they said, well, it looked like a bird to me. So
I want to talk, before we get into serious privacy issues and what we can and cannot do with drones, I think it would be useful to talk about some just possible uses of drones, just physically possible uses of drones. It's a pretty incredible technology, and they've gotten to the point now where you don't even have to have any real experience to fly a drone. They're pretty easy to fly. So what are some things that, and I'm not saying can legally be done, but can physically possibly be done with a drone?
The sky's the limit. And it's amazing to me to think that we are basically a Model T inventions of drones right now. What we're going to see probably in 10, 15, 20 years is going to be mind-blowing. You've got one thing for investigators and for real estate is I can develop three-dimensional models. I can actually fly the drone and stitch photographs together and get two-dimensional computer-assisted drawings or three-dimensional models of what I'm looking at. that are done with such high degrees of accuracy that I can actually zoom in and see cracks within the mortar of bricks. I can zoom out and see the entire picture, and then I can go three-dimensionally around that that object. So I guess for crime scenes, we're already starting to see those things used.
Yeah, and I have seen drones used by law enforcement for crime scene investigations, especially if they've got a brand new active crime scene. A lot of times they'll bring their drone operator out and have him fly the scene. And that ends up being presented in court as evidence sometimes. I've actually seen that, and that was a couple of years ago. So, and I think it's kind of interesting, you know, the laws are reactive by and large. So when you say we're still trying to figure out how some of these laws are applying to drones, I mean, I think it's going to take some case law, some people being upset with each other and making lawsuits or being prosecuted criminally to find out where some of this stuff shakes out. You know, I've talked to a couple of people, and before we get into the next topic, I do want to go back and talk about I've talked to several people who say, you know, all you have to do is register your drone and then you can use it for commercial purposes. I'm not sure that's right. I think if you're going to use it for commercial purposes, you might have to be certificated under Part 107. Can you clarify that?
Yes, you have to be certificated under Part 107 if you're going to use it for any kind of commercial purposes.
Okay, so what does the registry do for? Is that just for personal use?
Well, no, you're going to have to register your drone, okay? And you'll have to register your drone if it weighs between, the best analogy, 2 sticks of butter up to 55 pounds. So, you know, it's 0.55 pounds to 55 pounds. And that is everything that gets lifted off the ground. So I got this little toy thing, but if I'm going to attach anything to the bottom of this, everything that gets lifted off the ground is considered the weight of the drone. So if I stuck a gas can under that would contribute to the weight. So 55 pounds is the most that typically us as just regular citizens would be able to get. I'm sure they'll offer waivers in the future for larger drones for agricultural use and delivery use. But for right now, it's 55 pounds. And yes, you'll have to register your drone, but you can register it commercially or you can register it recreationally. Now, my recreational registration goes on every one of my recreational drones. My commercial registration, I have to register each one of those drones separately. So if I own a Mavic Pro, I have to do the Mavic Pro. Then I have my unique Q500. They're going to have separate registration numbers.
Okay.
And I have to place it to where they can be easily seen if there's an accident. So I could actually put it in a battery compartment as long as I didn't need a tool to open the battery compartment to look to see the registration number. I think those nowadays marking your aircraft is important, but I think in the future we're going to have digital markings where you'll be able to look and see on your cell phone that Lamar Ellis is flying in the sky around your house right now.
I got you. So this is kind of akin to a tail number on a general aviation aircraft.
That's exactly what it is. And considering that they're selling millions and millions of drones, those numbers are going to get eaten up pretty fast. So what they're doing is
they're going to have to go beyond the November 734 Papa Tango numbers.
Oh, exactly. And that's one thing that's why they're offering a recreational number to go on every one of your recreational craft. But they want to know the commercial craft, and you give them a serial number, the name, the type of drone, and then you have to give it a nickname, which is kind of unique for me. So I've been using the Top Gun. So I've got one's a Maverick, one's Hollywood, and one's Goose, and just couldn't think of any other names to throw on those things.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So we just got a little clarification from the audience. And again, for everyone in the audience, we are not attorneys. No one here is professing to be an attorney. We may be joined by an attorney at about the halfway mark, and I'm excited to have him join us. His name is Phil Hall. But he's not going to be giving legal advice. We are talking about the rules as we understand them. If you have questions about the legalities of drones, number one, I would talk to your attorney. Number two, go to the FAA. They are really happy to tell you what you can and cannot do with things. They're almost always going to tell you cannot do a thing. Anyway, so John Dube chimed in from the crowd, and he said, not just making money, but anything that enhances a business requires a Part 107 certificate. Does that sound right?
Well, if you're enhancing your business, then you're making money from that enhancement.
I see
So,
what you're saying. That makes perfect sense.
yes.
Alex or Access Vero says Part 107 is relevant in the U.S., but does not currently apply in Canada. Any Canadian info? I don't know anything about Canadian laws.
I think Canadian laws fall under the same guise as the United Kingdom's laws, and they're completely different. Whereas we have, you need to be a certain amount of feet away from people, they have a certain amount of meters away. So you can come up with the CAA rules and regulations. I'm not sure what CAA exactly stands for, but I know it's CAA regulations for drone usage.
So the CAA is the Canadian equivalent of the FAA.
I believe so. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got another question here. Or just a statement. The biggest factor are airspace restrictions. Large metro areas with several airports and overlapping airspace have lots of restrictions that would require waivers to fly. If you've never seen an aviation sectional, it's hard to get your head around airspaces. But the best description I can come up with is over a larger airport, you've got airspace restrictions that look like a wedding cake turned upside down. Does that make sense? So the ground to 500 feet may be a radius of, I don't know, a mile or so around the airport. And then from there out, it'll be above that and then higher and then above that and higher as you get further away from the airport. Basically, what that does is it allows commercial and general aviation to fly a flight path above the ground coming into the airport, and the airspace underneath that is available. Now, I don't know what the restrictions on flying these things and those drones in those areas are. I know you probably have to have separation. You can't get within a certain distance of a Class C airspace. But do you know those regulations off the top of your head?
Well, Class B, C, D, and E airspace, you have to contact somebody to notify them if you're within 5 miles of an airport.
Okay. So it's 5 miles of the airport. It doesn't have to do with the actual airspace as defined on the aeronautical charts.
No. And one thing is, I filed both waivers and I filed NOTAMs. NOTAMs is where you'll contact the airport directly, or you'll contact the flight information systems, and they'll put down a NOTAM stating that you're going to be in the air from a certain period of the day for a certain height and a certain radius. And I've actually been called in Oklahoma from the Wiley Post Airport stating what was my operation. And once I was able to explain to the control tower what was going on, they gave me clearance. The thing is that if you notify somebody, you're actually risk mitigating. And I will say that learning how to figure out where the NOTAMs are can be quite beneficial. I've been flying at the beach, and I got in the way of a mosquito spraying helicopter. And that thing came down the beach at 70 miles an hour. And it was just, I had just enough time to get the drone out of its way going up. And when I contacted the FAA, they said that one of the things that I should have done is gone in and seen if there were any NOTAMs as far as the helicopter was flying that day, because they're not restricted to flight altitudes.
Right. And again, I'm gonna take a second to just clarify a couple things for folks that aren't in the aviation world. NOTAM stands for Notice to Airmen, and it's a published set of things that are going on today that you can access through the FAA. You can call flight service and get them to tell you what the NOTAMs are for different areas. It can be difficult to find out where the NOTAMs are if you're not familiar with the system. So and I think if you go through the Part 107 certification, you would learn about how to find out what the NOTAMs are for the area where you're going to be operating. So going back to what we started with, beginning with kind of the possible uses for drones. I know I've talked to several investigators around the country who have talked about, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. We can do surveillance with the drones. I don't know how comfortable I would be doing that for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you've got to notify everybody and their grandmother that you're going to be flying the drone in a certain area, it kind of limits the secret nature of flying the drone. Number two, and we're going to get into some privacy issues here. If you're flying a drone high enough to see over someone's privacy fence into their backyard, I don't know how this would shake out, but I would think if I were being surveilled and somebody flew a drone over my 10-foot fence and took pictures of me in my backyard doing something that I said I couldn't do or whatever, I think my attorney would say, hey, Mr. Humphreys has an expectation of privacy behind that privacy fence in his own backyard.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but there have been some cases in regards to people that have been growing things in their backyard, that where the police have flown at 1,000 feet in a manned aircraft, one of those, and the courts argued the fact that commercial aircraft were in the area, so there was a reasonable he didn't have the reasonable expectation of privacy just because he put a fence up, and that the police flying at that same altitude were able to observe it was marijuana plants in his backyard, and which cited an inspection. Another case was another gentleman was doing the same thing, and basically they noticed that if a utility company could be standing on a utility pole and look in the backyard, then why couldn't, you're not supposed to overlook a crime if it's within visible use of what a normal person could see in the operation of their business.
Okay. Interesting. But that, excuse me, that deals with criminal issues. I know a lot of the people in this webinar, and the vast majority of private investigators out there deal with civil issues. So they're going to be doing surveillance for insurance fraud claims, medical malpractice claims, divorce, family law issues. And in those cases, I think there's just this kind of rule of thumb in the business that says, if you can see it from the street, then it's pretty much fair game to take a picture of it. If you've got to climb up in a tree and look over the fence to get that picture, they might have an expectation of privacy. The drone, I think, opens up some possibilities for investigators, because if you've got a drone up, 200-300 feet above a road and you're over the roadway, but you can see into someone's backyard, I don't know. Do they have an expectation of privacy there? John Doob just said surveillance is not feasible due to the distance from the subject. The UAV could be seen and heard, flight time, et cetera. And I think that's right. And one of the things I've noticed is if I'm out pretty much anywhere, my wife and I were in California a couple of weeks ago, and I heard the very distinct drone sound and looked up and saw somebody flying a little Mavic Pro. And it was way up there, but I could still hear it. Now, I think depending on which way the wind is blowing, you might not be able to hear it. But, these things are not terribly quiet.
Not yet, but they're working on it. As a matter of fact, the new Mavic Pro is coming out, and it's going to have some silencers on its motors.
Really?
Yes. They are working on it. The thing about it is that a drone is intrusive because you can see it and you can hear it. But what you give away on your cell phone is far more information than a drone could ever pick up. And you're absolutely right when it comes to privacy infringement. You've got people feel that they build a privacy fence or whatever, that the curtilages of their backyard should not be observed. Now, I will say that I don't deal with the private investigation part as much as I deal with real estate. But what I've found is there's some crossovers, because I just got done doing seminars for tax assessors. The tax assessors have to reevaluate property every couple of years. I'm beginning to see that there is think about this. Whoever owns the data has got access to information that a lot of people can use. So you don't have to be the investigator that is looking at the guy's backyard. If somebody else, maybe Amazon delivered a package that day and has got data up there for sale, or the tax assessor has gone over the back of the property and looked at it with a drone. There's so many other people that have got uses. And me, I'm already older than the people that are going to be accepting this technology. That's one of the reasons I kind of got into it. But my kids, I've got two young kids, and they watch Disney, and Disney has drones on all the time. So they're getting society used to drones being in the air. And I think it's just like everything else. We're just going to eventually give the rights away. I live in Atlanta. We've got surveillance on all our telephone poles in the city. So, I mean, is that an infringement? You know, you made a statement earlier, Hal, which is very, very prudent to this, and that is the rules and regulations are going to come up through the courts, the lower courts, and some are going to be highly restrictive and some of them are going to be very loose. And by the time they get to the Supreme Court and actually get a law on the books, I think then that's when we'll start seeing what you can actually do or not do with the drones as far as surveillance is concerned.
Right. So Axis Vero just says, thus far, the rule of thumb for us has been that the drone cannot be used to circumvent the law. Therefore, if you can't observe without the drone, you can't use a drone to view it. So I think a lot of investigators have been really excited about the use of drones and things you could do with them. I do know I ran into a company a couple of years ago that had tied a drone to a GPS tracker, and they had gotten the battery powers, optimized as possible. And they were claiming that you could set the drone and then it would follow a GPS tracker. And the suggestion was they could do UAV surveillance on a subject's car by slapping a GPS tracker under the car. I can think of so many problems with that I think we're just nowhere near that yet. But who knows? It may come to that. I know that the Mavic Pro has tracking already that you can use for yourself.
Mm-hmm. You can, and as a matter of fact, I can GPS coordinates of a certain property, and I can actually send the drone up every day and fly those exact coordinates and have it take a number of pictures. So one of the things I've heard for surveillance is that you want to keep a drone in the air for a certain length of time, but it's not that necessary if you can obtain all the photographs right off the bat, and then you can get your ingress and egress to the property, or whatever. I'm not saying to do it. I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying that the drones do give you capabilities that far exceed what the human eye can see from the street. Right.
So we're pushing right up against the halfway mark. I'm going to take a little bit of break. Lamar, I'm going to mute you. Again, for those just joining us, we've had several people drop in the past couple of minutes. This is the PI Education monthly webinar for April 2018. And I promised you a promo code, and we'll just put this up on the screen right now. If you go to pieducation.com, or is this going to show on the screen? Let's see if we can get that to show up. There we go. pieducation.com, drone 18. All lowercase, drone 18, gets you a 10% discount until April the 30th. So that will be good through the end of the month. pieducation.com. If you haven't been there, go there. We've got a lot of classes up on the site. We're proud of them. We've got some new ones in development right now. We're excited about those. One of those is an update to our surveillance course. Another one is, I've been promising this for quite some time, but we're working hard and fast on a criminal defense course. So stick around and learn more about that. Also, while we're here, take a second, go down underneath the video window on your screen there and click subscribe to the PI Education YouTube channel. It helps us out to have more subscribers. Doesn't cost you a thing. So click subscribe down there. We're joined today by Lamar Ellis. Lamar is an expert in the use of drones for commercial uses. We've been talking about possible uses of drones for private investigators. I know a lot of private investigators have been very excited about the idea of using drones for surveillance purposes. I think we're kind of working our way back to it may not be the best tool for surveillance. And I have been fairly vocal about my thoughts on surveillance. I'm not a big fan of using GPS trackers. Other investigators are. I think it's a better job to actually be there and witness things in person and document the stuff yourself. So the drone draws a question about that. If you're not the person there seeing the thing, if you didn't see it yourself, could you testify to it? There's some issues there. But we're back now with Lamar Ellis and talking about drones. And we've got a question here from the crowd that says, can you address the use of drones for documenting crime scenes or accident scenes? Now, this is where I think private investigators can exploit this technology in a fantastic way. Accident scenes for, say, for instance, you have a tanker truck that tumps and it slides into the T-bar on a box truck. The tanker, the tank is breached. It starts expressing liquid propane. It ignites. You've got one guy who dies, another guy who's burned badly. Insurance companies are going to want to find out exactly what happened. Now, I know that accident reconstructionists will go out and measure and take measurements and try to reconstruct an accident scene. I think a drone could be very useful for something like this. What do you think, Lamar?
Oh, my gosh, tremendously useful. And even going before you start to investigate it, think about this: as a first responder coming to the scene, sending a drone up to see if what the tanker was carrying wasn't hazardous material. You might have to disperse people. People might not show symptoms till after 15 minutes of being exposed to whatever the product was in the tanker. This could actually, with a sniffer on it, drones with sniffers, which for pipeline inspections, can actually ascertain that there's hazardous chemicals in the air. You could actually have a way to get to the accident scene, which would be safe for everybody involved. You'd be able to disperse the rescue people to the right places, the fire department to the right place, to basically be able to fight the oncoming fire or whatever. Then afterwards, after everything's all said and done, you can fly. They've noticed that they've taken drones into accident scenes right now, and they're able to clear a fatality accident quicker because the drone can take a numerous amount of photographs. And not only just one set, but you're talking about an octo camera, which can shoot from every different angle around the camera. And that slowly moves over the site. Then you've got your 3D model of what's going on, and you've got your two-dimensional computer-assisted drawing that you can actually go to, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't notice that when I was there, and you can zoom in. The capabilities and the features are tremendous on so many different levels. I see it in real estate. You might have missed something, an easement or something, and I can go in and go directly to it. So accident clearing, it's actually reduced the times. And then for litigation, wouldn't it be nice if you had it during and then after, as far as taking care of the after the crime scene is already complete? The assertion of the investigation. I'm sorry, of the crime scene.
Oh yeah, I think that's a fantastic use of this technology, and we'll talk about those things. I'm trying to see if I can get Phil Hall to join us here, so I'm going to take a second and send him a link to the webinar because I think he can discuss with me the next topic that we're about to introduce. Okay, so for accident reconstructionists, if a first responder comes up and flies a drone over the scene while the accident scene is what we would call active, you've got people injured, you've got but the drone flies over and gathers information. That could be incredibly useful for the first responders because they might actually see somebody in serious jeopardy and be able to get to them quicker because they know where they are. They might be able to tell, like you said, if you've got a sniffer, and a sniffer is just basically a mechanism that is built into a drone that allows it to basically sniff the air and tell what's in the air, kind of read parts per billion or whatever it is for different compounds. And I hadn't thought about that aspect of drones, but for air quality testing, you could use it for that purpose. So there are a lot of ways to do it. I'm just looking at, we've got so many questions coming in. This is awesome. John Doob says, documenting crime scenes, accident scenes, these things need to be done correctly. Documentation, handling of data, etc. It can be evidence in a case. If measured incorrectly, a couple of inches off could cause someone to win a case, ruin their life, career, etc. So I think that's I think that's a fair thing to say. You've got to do these things correctly, and I'm sure that someone out there has a best practices manual, or there have to be some best practices for using drones for crime scene and accident scene analysis. Do you know anything about those?
I've had an ancillary kind of business that occurred. I was dealing with the EPA, and as a matter of fact, our footage was coming off was about literally 6 feet off of what their processor was processing. So a recommendation is that whatever you use the software to look at your crime scene, make sure you've got the processor that can handle that software, because processors don't handle other softwares correctly. You might be a foot off, whereas if you use the correct software, you could be, a centimeter, 2 centimeters off, which is, could be night and day for somebody's life on the line, I guess. So yes, we ran into the situation. We hired another drone company, and the drone company was able to match the processor that they had. We lost out on the business.
Fair enough. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That when you're dealing with tech issues, you got to be at the cutting edge. Otherwise, you lose out. I've got a question from the crowd, and I think I know, Lamar, what your answer is going to be, but I will ask it. This is from Rosetta Stone Investigations. Lamar, I own a DJI Mavic Pro. I've been contracting a certified operator. What is your advice, Lamar, for a newbie who wants to learn how to fly a drone?
Okay. But practice. And what I mean by that is that you can hire somebody to teach you how to fly, but the day that they've left you, you're going to be on your own. So I am a big proponent on YouTube, and I'm a big proponent of reading your manuals. It's a great tool. Not everybody is acclimated to fly a drone. As a matter of fact, I do this every webinar seminar. Buy a little $30 toy drone, fly it around your house, crashing into the walls. It'll give you a certain appreciation for it. And when you take that $1,000 Mavic Pro out, you'll have at least some depth perception and some movement perceptions that you'll be able to apply directly to a bigger machine. For a newbie, find a good place to fly that nobody is there. I fly at my children's elementary school on weekends. There's nobody there. Then I can go to public parks during the week and fly. I try to keep it away from people. If there's anybody that's there, I try to inform them that I'm flying the drone, because I have found that I get more disturbed by people who don't know what's going on, that want to share with me their experiences of flying drones, or want to hear about all the features that I have on mine. As a matter of fact, I recommend a 2-person operation. And one is basically for the person to fly the drone, and the other one is either to keep crowd control or to keep your eyes on the airspace. That is another rule that I didn't mention. You're not allowed to fly your drone beyond your line of sight at this present time.
Okay, so if you're flying a drone, you've got to be able to see it the whole time.
You or a visual observer. And you could be flying the drone right now, but as long as I had the visual aspect and I had a way of talking to you, such as the way I'm doing right now, and was able to visualize the drone in 3-dimensional space, then we are compliant.
Okay.
With the rules.
So for accident reconstruction, I think a drone could be incredibly useful. Number one, if the first responders were to fly a drone over the scene at the time of the accident, that would be incredibly helpful. I also think there are some uses, and I think Phil Hall just joined us. Phil, can you hear me?
Hi, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. So Phil Hall is a friend of mine and a client in Texas. He's an attorney out there. And Phil, we've been talking about uses for drones for private investigators. I think we've pretty well foreclosed the idea that they can be used for surveillance. There are too many issues there right now.
Sure.
But we did get into the idea of using drones for crime scene investigations and for accident reconstruction investigations, for accident reconstructionists. So Phil, you and I were out at an alleged crime scene a couple of weeks ago, and we brought out your DJI Mavic Pro. Kind of talk to us about that and what we did.
Sure. So there was we have a case. It's a murder case that was being investigated. Hal jumped on and was assisting us with it. And I was actually called out to the scene when we got hired on the case. And the biggest thing that we wanted to show was the different locations that the people who were present when this incident occurred, their positions. And so what we wanted to do was basically take an aerial shot, which I know we could have done it on Google Maps, but the issue is we're kind of limited as to what the aerial shot would have looked like whenever Google took the photo. So what we did is we went out there shortly after, days after the incident had occurred, and basically placed the vehicles as they were on the day of the shooting, to try to basically show what the scene would have looked like. And we currently are actually in the process of putting together a grand jury packet, and we're going to do some diagrams to show kind of where the deceased person was standing and the route that they were taking when self-defense is being raised. And there's no question about that. It's been out in the media. And so essentially we just wanted the grand jury to see kind of the transaction of events and series of events, how they've unfolded. And the only way to do that was with an aerial shot and placing the vehicles in the manner that they were placed on the day of the shooting. And so we're still currently working on it, but it was just something that came to mind, and it was something different, a little out of the box, because obviously drones are still new. It's newer technology, but it was something that we implemented, and I think it's been going to be very, very helpful for our case.
I think it's going to be incredibly helpful. And here, let's all be honest here, Lamar, Phil, all three of us. I mean, it's just fun to play with the toys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're awesome.
So for crime scene, for private investigators, it's possible to go out as soon as possible after an event occurred, and you can tell what the scene looked like as far as leaves on trees, which can help you determine sight lines, things like that. I know a lot of times for private investigators, we come to the party well after the fact. So you might have to wait until the next year, same date, same weather conditions kind of thing to do that kind of analysis. But I can see a lot of uses for drones for crime scene analysis for private investigators. I know for law enforcement, and Lamar, you said that you've done some training for law enforcement. How do you see them using drones?
I think the one thing that I would recommend for law enforcement, or for anybody, as a matter of fact, if you see somebody flying a drone and they're not supposed to be flying where they're flying, the last thing you want to do is interrupt them while they're flying the drone, because then that becomes your liability. You've affected the pilot's ability to handle the aircraft. So if they're spying on you, wait till they land the drone before you do anything. Yeah, because the last thing you want to do is impede their flight pattern. If they cause an accident, they can always turn around and blame you for the reason why the accident occurred.
Right.
So, but as far as I'm sorry, my train of thought just left me there.
We're talking about law enforcement and how they use drones.
One of the things is law enforcement that I've been dealing with is the fact that the first responders, how they can get to a scene immediately, and then like search and rescue. It's not finding the person that's usually difficult. It's how do you extract that person? And so for law enforcement, they're still getting their hands around it. Most of the laws basically prevent them from doing anything with a drone unless they've got a warrant, or if somebody's immediate life is an immediate risk, or it can save from a terrorist action. They've really put dampers on a lot of enforcement as far as using those things are concerned. But they can have ancillary, like working with search and rescue and things of that nature.
Okay, I've got a question from the crowd real quick. Eric Neves, I think that's how you pronounce that, went to his local park up in New York and was told that he needed a permit to fly his drone, regardless of whether or not he had a certification. He is Part 107 certified. So do you have any thoughts on that, Lamar?
There's a court case that I think still in court right now. Same thing happened to an operator outside of Chicago. And so he knew that the community wasn't going to allow him to fly the drone over the park. So he took the drone to the park and flew it, and they fined him. And so he's arguing that municipalities do not have control over the airspace.
Interesting. Phil, this might be a fun time for you to chime in. I know you're, we talked about this, Phil, we're not going to ask any legal advice, but you are an attorney in Texas. And what are your thoughts if you had a client that came to you and said, hey, I was flying my drone at the park, I was getting pictures of my kids, and the city says they're going to sue me or they're going to fine me? What would you advise, or not what you advise your client, but how would you approach that?
The first thing I would do is, one, I would try to assess the situation. So first, were they cited or were they not, right? If there's threats that are being made that they're going to get sued or whatever, then, we just kind of let the things unfold as they come. But obviously, I would make a call to the city attorney if that were the case. Texas has laws that are starting to cover drones, and some of that basically says you are allowed to shoot in a public place, take photos and basically film in a public location. And there was actually a recent federal court case that basically said the FAA does not have the authority to require registration of consumer drones. So there's not even a permit that they can require you to have. Now, surely the city that you are in, I'm in Fort Worth. So in Fort Worth, they can require the person or the operator of the drone to follow certain conditions and make sure it's not obstructing, any obviously police investigations, as stated earlier by someone in this interview. And I wanted to chime in on that because, yes, if the police are conducting an investigation in Texas, if let's just say the police were conducting an investigation and I throw my drone up and start following this drone, or I interfere with their investigation, I can actually be charged with interference with public duty. So I would caution anybody to be very, very careful if there are police doing any investigations, not to interfere and not to impede their investigation, and just to kind of stay clear. But yeah, I would just kind of assess the situation and look at the law, because this is still new and developing. And I think that even the prosecutors and the city attorneys have probably not dealt with a situation like this too much. So it's something that the attorneys would probably get together and try to figure out. But if they were cited, I'm sure there would be some sort of favorable resolution that we can come to, as long as there was no serious consequences of impeding anybody's investigation or anything like that.
Right. So I think one of the things that occurs to me is, like, for private investigators, again, and I know a lot of PIs really got excited about using drones for surveillance work. Phil, have you ever seen anyone try to use a drone for surveillance work, or have you ever experienced PIs doing anything like that?
I haven't. You're the first investigator that I've worked with that I've used a drone with, and it was exciting, and I'm just amazed at the quality, basically the photos, the way they came out. And I'm excited at obviously working with you on our case that we have, and putting together a grand jury packet, because it's showing us angles that not even the police had
Right.
on this scene. And if, without going into too many details, it just provides literally a completely different perspective than you would have by just standing on the ground. And to be able to have that resource available, and to be able to provide that to somebody who's evaluating the case, and in Texas, a grand jury, I mean, that could make all the difference in the case, and whether the case would be indicted or no billed. So I've never worked with anybody on it, but I'm happy that you and I, Hal, got to work on this case and use a drone. And if it's available and you have the ability to use a drone, I highly encourage it.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. One of the things that Phil and I tried to do when we were out at that scene is we attempted to do a I'll go ahead and mute you there, Phil, if you need it. We attempted to do a route track by having the drone follow us back to a certain spot. We had some issues with that. I do think that might be a useful tool. We've had a couple of people chime in, and I did not get to their questions or their statements as we were going through the first part of the webinar, but use of a drone for pre-surveillance or route mapping, I think, can be incredibly useful. And Lamar, I'm going to hand this one to you. I think for pre-surveillance, you actually inadvertently brought that up. A drone could give you a really good bird's eye view of where you might be conducting a surveillance. And you might, by using a drone, be able to identify locations that would work better for surveillance than just looking at a Google Earth image. And then route mapping, I know for criminal cases, well, Lamar, respond to that if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, I think that as long as you're not infringing on somebody's privacy, that the airspace is the federal government, the FAA wants to make sure that the airspace is safe. That is their major concern. They're not dealing with privacy. That wasn't what they were enacted to do. So that's why it's going to work its way up through the lower courts. And Phil, when you were talking about registration, President Trump in December basically now states that all drones that weigh between 0.55 pounds to 55 pounds need to be registered, whether you're doing it recreationally or commercially. But as far as route assessment, what a tremendous asset that is. And as a matter of fact, I do believe that during Trump's inaugural parade, it was the very first time we actually had people out there trying to see if there were drones that were going to be flown into the parade. Because it's not how you bring a drone down, it's is it carrying something?
Right.
Could it be carrying something hazardous or whatever? So the amount of technologies into putting them into the sky or trying to figure out how to take them out of the sky too, safely.
Interesting. All right. So really quickly, we're getting tight on time here, which is exciting because I've really enjoyed this. Eric Neves also asks, you should get insurance for your drone, correct? I think absolutely you should get insurance for your drones. Check your policy, your homeowner's policy, whatever, and just make sure that that's covered, because if you do some damage, you want to have an insurance policy there to cover it. Does that sound like good advice, Phil?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Anytime you have the ability to get insurance and protect yourself, I highly encourage it. Just because, some of these things are very difficult to fly. The DJI Phantom that we used in our case is a little bit easier to fly because they have like a beginner mode. But I think we did crash it at one point, if you remember, Hal. It ran into a tree. We were trying to go down the street and show the path that the suspect had walked. And so I highly encourage you getting insurance if you can. And to elaborate on one more thing, I highly encourage any investigators that are using drones, obviously, to work with the attorney and ensure that they're following all local laws, and obviously basically not interfering or impeding with any investigation. But I can't speak to every state and classification of drones, because yes, there are drones that are, you can get for $25 on Amazon, and there's drones that run for like $5,000. So I think the FAA and each state has different classifications for the size and the weight of the drone.
Right. And I think another thing I'd like to point out, and again, most of the people in the crowd today are private investigators or people curious about the business. As a private investigator, if you're working for an attorney, you're an agent for that attorney. And what you do is basically a function of them. So you've got to be very careful about how you use the tools in your tool bag, because it can blow back on your attorney client if you're not careful. So just think about those things. I have a question from the crowd about, is it unlawful to fly if I don't have a company, but I get paid for the footage? I think, Lamar, I'm going to let you speak to that. That falls under the category of you're making money or furthering your business. So yeah, you probably should have a certification.
Well, you're making money off of it. So yes, you should have that Part 107 certification that allows you to fly.
Okay.
Yes.
Phil, I want to go back to the idea of route mapping. And I spend my nights thinking about crazy scenarios because I see so many crazy scenarios. But the classic like murder mystery TV show or novel where the defense attorney proves that his client could not have done it because it took me 38 minutes to run this route, and whoever got there from this spot, it only took them 5 minutes. Just not possible. I could see a defense attorney taking a drone and getting all the proper clearances from the FAA and from the city and whoever they need it, and saying, look, you could probably even get a court order to fly that route to make that argument. Would that be a viable use of a drone for a private investigator? Absolutely.
So I had a case about 2 years ago. It was an intoxication manslaughter case, and it highlights the importance of using a drone. Our issue was, in this intoxication manslaughter case, our client was driving on this highway where there was a lot of construction going on. And it was not a very well lit highway, and there was basically some hills and there was some obstructed views, and we wanted to get aerial shots. In this trial, we wanted to be able to present them to the jury. And the problem that I ran into is the only resource that I had available at the time was using Google Maps. And Google Maps did not have basically the layout of the highway, because they were completely redoing the construction on this highway because of the number of accidents that occurred in this particular area. And so had we had a drone and been able to do the mapping from like the start point to the end point of where this accident had occurred, given, you know, that we would have been able to obtain a court order if needed, it would have been absolutely helpful in our case. And unfortunately, we did not have that available to us, but luckily we were able to take a video, a cell phone video of the route that was taken shortly after that accident. And we were able to play that for the jury. But had we not been able to do that, Google unfortunately was not the best option for us at that time. So again, if you can use a drone, use it.
Phil, let me ask you, we got a question from the crowd. What law firm are you with? Do you mind to say that?
Not at all. I'm an attorney. I work for an attorney named Francisco Hernandez. We do criminal defense and immigration, and we do some personal injury as well. We're in downtown Fort Worth.
And I can say without hesitation that Phil is a fine attorney. I've worked with him on a case now. He and I have a mutual friend with whom I work quite a bit. I think we can safely call Fort Worth my my second home these days. All right, so we're getting down to 1 minute left, and I've got to wrap this up. Phil, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do it.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, Lamar, and I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Phil. Lamar, thank you so much for being here. Real quick, Lamar, tell us your website again, so folks can come find you if they want to get you to do a seminar for them.
www.dronenoir.com. And then I have a Facebook page, simply Drone Noir. Okay.
So if you want to hire Lamar to come do a webinar for you or a seminar for you, you can do that. He's an entertaining guy. I've enjoyed talking with him. We've talked well before this as well. Interesting topic. We've got a lot of questions today. This is going to be live, or actually it's going to be recorded on the YouTube channel into perpetuity. Take a minute, go down underneath the video box and click subscribe to the PI Education YouTube channel. And finally, PIeducation.com. If you use the discount code DRONE18, all lowercase, DRONE18, you'll get 10% off all of your education for the rest of the month, and that lasts until April 30th. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. Have a good weekend.